Welcome to the Women in Safety podcast. Do you have questions around how can you be recognized for your contributions and get ahead? Join our global WIS community, which provides a supportive space for women and our allies. Our discussions help break down barriers and support diversified leadership around the world. To subscribe and listen to our shows, visit safeopedia.com. Now, here's our Women in Safety discussion. Hi, and welcome to another WSI show. We have a conversation today that is going to be very interesting as we're focusing on defining your leadership style. And with us today is Kathy Seabrook and Brenda Madley. And it's part of the series that we've been working on, building ourselves up and gaining access to higher level positions of influence. Welcome. Thank you for joining us on the show.
Thank you for having us.
Tamara, thank you for having us.
So I'm going to just kick it off by handing it to you, Kathy. Can you share a little bit about what you're doing in this mentor-mentee program? Why did you get involved? And what do you hope to be providing to Brenda as a mentor?
So thank you for that great question. Why am I involved? I have to say, I'm just passionate about people and their safety, health, and well-being, and any opportunity to engage with others. In this program, which has been developed called Leading Safely, and it's sponsored by ROSPA as well as L'Oreal. The reason why I said yes to being a mentor is because I don't really think there's a difference between being a mentor or mentee. I think we're all learning from one another. And I didn't know about Brenda before when I said yes, but the reality for me is this program is so important because it allows access for women to touch base with people in the industry sector, to be able to identify their strengths, their weaknesses, to be able to just talk through some of the issues they have, and honestly, for them to help develop their own solutions to their own challenges.
No, it sounds like an awesome program. And I really like the fact that you are networking with somebody that you wouldn't have met otherwise. I think that's really strong. And Brenda, can you share a bit about how you got into the program and what you were hoping to gain?
Well, I saw the program advertised through LinkedIn, and what attracted me to it specifically was that it was targeted specifically to women as an underrepresented gender in safety. And in the work that I do, it is highly male dominated. There's only 8% of workers in my organization of 1,000 that are women, and women leaders are even fewer. So the attracting to me initially was that it was targeted specifically to women like myself working in an underrepresented function or role as a woman in a male dominated organization.
Yeah, no, I'm really with you on that one. That's something that I also realized when I got into health and safety is exactly that it is very male dominated, and there weren't a lot of women to reach out to and learn from. So I think it's really great that Kathy, you've stepped up, because you are quite the leader in our industry and really helped to cultivate Brenda's skill and share your knowledge and experience. What do you believe are the most important attributes of a successful leader? So Kathy, I'm going to throw that to you first.
So I jotted down a couple things because I thought, what exactly is it? And there is a difference between a male influenced leadership style versus female. And I'm not talking about men and women, I'm just talking about styles. And so for me, these were the things that came to mind. Perseverance. I cannot tell you how many times I've been said no to, and you persevere and you figure out the best way forward. To be an influencer, and this is to be able to influence in scenarios where you have absolutely no authority and you don't have any control. And we as safety and health professionals, that's what we do every day, to be able to lead in that way. Being decisional. Now, for me, being decisional doesn't mean that, someone asks me a question that I need to make a decision on, and how fast I do it. For me, it's about knowing when I have enough data, enough information to make an informed decision And also knowing that I'm not going to have all the information and that I am taking a risk and that that's okay. I'm willing, got the shoulders, the thickness of the skin to be able to say, okay, we're going to course correct. If we make a decision and it's not actually the right decision as it plays out, we'll course correct and we'll figure it out as a group, as a team. So for me, leadership is all about working with and engaging people and teams, because at the end of the day, if it's just one person saying you've got to do this and you do not have the buy-in from everyone, and I'm not talking about coaxing people, I'm talking about getting their input so they're involved in the decision making. So that's the other piece. And the last, which I think is probably one of the most important things, is understanding the business environment in which we operate. And it's really seeing this larger landscape so we can actually understand where those decisions and how they impact both the company as well as communities and our workers, as well as what are the interdependencies. And I have two Canadians here, so I'm hoping that you'll get my analogy. But I had a colleague share with me, and it's stuck with me through the years. It's a quote by Wayne Gretzky, right? World famous hockey player. I mean, like, wow. And I have to tell you, I didn't follow hockey until this quote. And Wayne Gretzky is known as answering the question about, how did you, attain the world record for the number of goals scored? And his answer was, I don't skate to where the puck is. I skate to where I think the puck is going to be. And for me, that was the greatest analogy when that colleague told me that story about Wayne Gretzky, and I became a huge fan immediately, because I think that is leadership. That's really, really trying to understand a bigger picture and figure out where you're going to be and line everything up so you can be successful there.
I love that analogy by Wayne about skating where the puck will be, because it really speaks into your point about understanding the business that you operate. And when you're making decisions, you're not making decisions just for tomorrow or 6 months. You have to be making decisions for the long term and understanding how will that decision that you're making impact different areas of the business. That's really key and really core to leadership. So I'm glad that you brought that out. Brenda, did you have any thoughts that you wanted to share on this?
I really agree with the points that Kathy made. And it's a reminder to me that there's no magic spell to this, to being a good leader. It really is a number of things that make a good leader. And to add to Kathy's points, I really feel that an ability for leaders to be able to communicate purpose is an important attribute, because it creates, I think, a better emotional investment in our teams. And I believe that our culture is changing, and people want, especially in a post-pandemic world, wanting to live more purpose-driven lives and really understand why their roles and functions have meaning and importance. And the flip to that is that I do not believe command and control, highly hierarchical organizations are going to be successful in the long term. And in a post-pandemic situation, I think we're going to see that evolve much more quickly than we would have. And to add to that and adjacent to that, and to complement what Kathy was saying, is that we've really got to look at work being more outcome-based and focus on outcomes, because this traditional work-life distinction just doesn't exist anymore. And especially with working in global economies, all of us work with international partners or clients or have operations internationally. I just don't see that sort of 9 to 5, you're in the office for this, you get 1 hour for lunch. That distinction between work and home is muddied now. It's all gray. There's no such thing as black and white. I don't think there's even work-life balance, right? We bring our whole selves to work, and we bring our whole selves home, and our work and our personal life are inexplicably integrated.
Yeah.
So a focus on outcome-based work is really where I think leaders need to take their leadership styles now, and don't worry about where or how that work gets done.
I'd really like to support Brenda's notion of both purpose, but most importantly, that I love that, the outcomes-based work. I hadn't heard that before, but that makes, to me, I love the wording on that. Well, just last month, Apple employees, when Tim Cook said that post-pandemic, we want all our employees back in our California offices only 3 days a week, because we know that our employees want to be coming back to work. And 80 of some of their most valuable, if you will, employees had a very, very diplomatic letter to Tim Cook that went viral, that pretty much said that actually we want to make sure that you do know what our wishes are, and our wishes are not to come back to work 5 days a week. We've just spent 18 months during a pandemic being very productive and outcomes based, to Brenda's point, right? At the end of the day, we really aren't looking forward to losing 2 hours commuting time every day, that we have, really built a life out where we have some good balance. It's been a very difficult time with COVID, but we would like to continue to have a better balance with our families and with our work life. We'll see what plays out, but initially, and I think part of it was the D variant, but Apple has put off coming in the 3 days a week until another month. So we'll see what'll happen, but it's this concept, to Brenda's point, that workers, I look workers as stakeholders, right, to the company.
Yeah.
Workers are having a much greater voice. So I just love that, Brenda. I'm so aligned with that.
So Kathy, here's a question for you, because you've seen how things were before, and you've been in leadership positions, and you've seen where COVID has now kind of navigated us through the barriers and the challenges, the ups and the downs. And one of the things that keeps coming to my mind is how do you develop your own style of leadership? Can you help us understand that a little bit? Because you've done a phenomenal job.
Well, thank you very much. I would have to say I learned in 2 ways. One, in a company, I worked in a financial services organization, and I went up from, working in Richmond, Virginia, to being a national consultant for that financial services organization, to running the UK risk control operations. And I did that for about 5 years before coming back to the United States, repatriating. I was an expat in the UK. And when I did that, I made a decision to start Global Solutions Incorporated. My career pathing there was just not very clear, and it really wasn't what I wanted to do. So there's the business side. And so, boy, did I basically get thrown in the deep end in a lot of areas, because very, very male leadership style. And I was thrown in the deep end, and add on that, managing in a country where they always talk about 2 languages, 2 countries divided by a common language. That was the United States and the UK. I got into trouble sometimes for saying things that were really not on. But most importantly, I was challenged in the way I was thinking every step of the way. Because when I thought if you said X, it was Y, it actually wasn't. So the concept of, to table something in the UK basically means to put it on the table and you're going to talk about it. In the United States, to table something means you're gonna hold for another meeting. And so, I constantly was challenged, and I found that was really good, because that really helped me in managing change. Being completely put in scenarios where I didn't have any experience, I had to really become much more agile. So there was that piece. The other piece is when I went to the UK, that was when all the European directives were starting to come through on occupational health and safety, the first 6. And so it was all a risk-based approach. And the rest is history. I've been involved in management systems and a risk-based approach ever since the late 90s. Actually, that was the early 90s. when I was in the UK. So this constant change and then coming back to the States, starting the company, literally always being in a scenario where I just did not know the answers. So what I learned, and this is where the leadership skill, I believe, is really having to come to grips with that I don't, as a leader, right, whether it's the formal title is the UK manager or an informal title is the influencer, I came to grips with the fact that I did not need to know everything. And once I figured that out, it took me a while, but once I figured that out, I would just go to the team. I would go to the people. I'd ask my mentors. I would say, this is my scenario. What do you think? And I'd get all the input that I needed, and then I make the decision. And honestly, it would have been far better decisions than had I done it on my own. So to me, I think that was important. So that concept of being able to be much more agile and open up and persevere, frankly, because sometimes when you make a decision, people don't like it, but you have to persevere through it in order for people to come out the other side to say, yeah. So those are just a couple things, but being a change agent, it's kind of become part of my whole leadership style, and it's painful at times, but very rewarding and purposeful.
I like what you're saying about perseverance and pushing through something. Brenda, what were your thoughts when Kathy was talking about this question?
Yeah, I think I really, again, I agree with a lot, with everything that Kathy is saying around leadership and input. And, I think a great word to sort of summarize all of those concepts is just a high degree of collaboration from, anybody who has an interest or education experience in whatever direction that you're talking about. And then for me personally, it kind of feels very similar to my belief that, just flexibility is really key with leadership. And for myself personally, with the leadership of my teams, just understanding that it's my function to set the standard, but allow flexibility in how that standard is met. And I believe you can allow your team more ownership of their roles if you allow them to meet the purpose and intent of that standard through different strategies. Because as we see in organizations, especially international ones, strict compliance to a form or a process or whatever it is isn't always necessary, and sometimes is even meaningless or time consuming or redundant, depending on the environment you're in. So, setting a standard and allowing flexibility to how that standard is met, I think it should be a consideration for some leaders, because it's easy to revert back to that command and control and say, well, I told you to do it this way.
Yeah. And I think it's important also to encourage others to have voice so that you can listen and hear what other people are thinking, right? Because they've got great contributions as well. And so I want to move into discussing, how do you align your organization with your own leadership vision and mission? And Kathy, you were talking a bit about that when you came back from doing all your consulting and started with your own company.
I love it, because I'm thinking about Brenda when I'm getting ready to say this. Yeah. So I had this great business plan, everything down, my goals and objectives, how I was going to do my marketing. My very first client did not align, and I said yes, which is my other big thing in terms of leadership, saying yes, even when I did not really know exactly how to do it. And that client took me on a trajectory that led me to just really doing strategic management systems kind of work. Had I stuck to my plan, I've been in trouble. So that concept of being flexible and agile, Brenda, I can totally relate to that. So there is that piece. And for me, this whole idea of, I always talk about True North and my True North test. And that is just where the impact and interdependencies of people and their health, their safety, and their well-being, they're actually valued as a measure of true corporate performance. And this is, to me, where it's the game changer. They are embedded in the decision-making of the company. So, they're thinking about their people, they're thinking about their health, safety, and well-being. So for me, that's my purpose. And Tamara, before we got on the call, one of the things I was talking about was time. I mean, in terms of time, this question. One of the things that, because I understand that that's my passion, that's what I'm really looking to do. Everything that I've done with my company, for example, I just finished a very helping an organization understand ISO 45001 and helping them think about what does that actually look within their company. It's one of probably the largest technology companies in the world. And it wasn't about, kind of, Brenda, to your point, it wasn't about like, okay, this is the standard. It was, what's real and relevant, and what does it look like in your company? How does it work? To me, the whole concept of principles of organizational change, which we kind of tied into the last question, is, you got to model. I mean, both from a leadership perspective in implementing a program, as well as being the leader. It's not everybody's going to agree. That's why I said about the perseverance. So it's bringing in this concept of finding early adopters, that ripple effect, getting people in the organization. And I'm not just talking about the safety and health people, I'm talking about operational leaders. You might find legal is in your court. You might also find that, procurement totally gets what you're trying to do. And they get those interdependencies on risk assessment, for example. And it's finding those people in the organization that can actually amplify whatever it is, whatever the initiative is, as a safety and health professional trying to do. And that's leadership. Because someone said to me once, and it just stuck, what is the definition of leadership? And, you go through all the books, Harvard Business Review, whatever. But honestly, leadership is when you actually have followers and they literally are lined up following you. That's how you know you're a good leader. So, I would just share that. And the fact that about modeling. So in everything I do, I try to model good leadership. I fail a lot. But that concept of when I do fail, it's that other organizational principle of fail fast, learn fast. It's like course correct, right? The flexibility Brenda was talking about. So those are just some of the thoughts. And so I pick and choose in my consultancy and also in my pro bono work, which I do a lot of, whether it's in ISO, whether it's in the Capitals Coalition, whether it's within ASSP or IOSH, it's always about, okay, is this something that in my heart of hearts, is this what I want to do? And is this of purpose?
Now, I like when you always say this little phrase, what is your true north? And for me, that's like almost having a compass, is what you're thinking about doing. Is it really part of your passion, as you were saying, as well as it fits into your principles? As I grew my leadership style, it is also about like, well, is what I'm being asked to do or what I'm thinking of doing, does it really fit into my principles that I'm choosing to live by? So that was a key one, is making sure that those decisions are really embedded into those two things: passion, principles, your true north. And Brenda, what are your thoughts around this?
What I'm hearing from both you and you, Tamara, and Kathy, is this idea of this values-centered leadership when we talk about true north. And we all have our own internalized values, and we have our organizational values. And as leaders, we're trying to translate both of those into your leadership vision and mission. And I believe it's very important. In fact, I think it's critical to translate that vision and your values into observable and measurable actions, objectives, or behaviors. I'll give you an example. One of our organizational values is we are family. And what that means to our organization is that it's important that we take care of our employees, our clients, and the communities where we work and live, sometimes temporarily. So that's easy to say, but what does that actually mean in terms of a measurable, observable behavior? And in our orientations, it means we don't litter in our communities. We don't throw our cigarette butts out of the windows. We take off and carry our dirty, muddy boots through the hotel. We are intentional in supporting community events like bake sales or local fundraising activities. That's what our family value means. So I think great leaders, great organizations are able to translate the corporate gobbledygook into what does this mean for you? What does that mean that you do? Because actions create habits and habits create values. So it's a way to even reinforce those important corporate leadership or your own internal leadership values and vision.
I love that. I really loved what you said about actions create habits and habits create values. I love that. That left me speechless. What can I say? How do you follow up to that, Kathy? Now that we're almost at the end of our time, so I do want to thank you both. But before you go, do you have any other last thoughts that you wanted to share with our audience?
Brenda, I think you should go first. Tamara keeps putting me first. You should go first.
I'm gonna circle all the way back to something Kathy said in when she answered the first question, and that is just resiliency.
Mm-hmm.
There's always going to be someone who says no. There is always going to be someone that is resistant to change. But if you are resilient and focus on what it is, your outcome that you're trying to generate, you almost always end up with good results. And maybe, part of that resiliency is as having to change or course correct or take in new information and have the courage and bravery to admit you're wrong or change course in some ways. But that's part of resiliency.
And I think also, like, back to your point about, being intentional with your actions and behaviors. I have learned, at least in my walk through life, is that as you said, there's always going to be the naysayers. And the best thing to do, like Covey says, is put it in the trash can. But once you start living by your passion and your principles, and then you kind of sketch out, like, well, what do I have to do in order to achieve where I want to be going? Like your true north, right? As Kathy was saying, it makes it so much easier, because now, like, I have it over there. I don't know if you can see it, but my own life board, that every year I go back to that and I look at my life board from last year and I add to it. I scribble out the things that didn't work, because, as you said, you have to pivot, right? That's part of being good leadership, is fail fast. And how did you say?
Fail fast, learn fast.
Yeah, fail fast, learn fast. And so that's been, like, I think also having like tools like that in order to kind of visualize what you're thinking and where you want to go might help some people. Other people, maybe a diary, like different people have different things, right? Kathy, what are your thoughts?
So I would suggest, for me, this has been the smartest thing that I've ever done. Have your personal board of directors, people that are around you, that you can reach out to, that you trust, and they do not even have to be in safety. They can be whomever, that you can, they're sounding boards for you. that has helped me more times than I can tell you, when I'm just so caught up in my head and I just can't figure out a way forward, or I think my gut is telling me that I should do this. It's just, again, getting that feedback. So for me, I just think that, and you don't have to have your own consultancy. It's you as a safety professional and a company. But for me, that is important. And both you all have really kind of really echoed, and I'm echoing you about really understanding what is your personal why. Why the heck are you doing this work? Because you know what? We're not getting paid $1 million a year. But it's a really, and I spoke with someone today on a call, we do purposeful work. And there is just something, for me, there is just something in it. That's what drives me. That's what gives me energy. And even when I'm just really frustrated because you're dealing with bureaucracy or whatever, it kind of brings me home, brings me back to, what's important for me. Again, it's about people, and their health, safety, and their well-being. And if I say it once, I'll say it 1,000 times. And for me, that's what I mean by true north. And, in the organization, it's about, measurements of performance, and, it's about decision-making. But for me personally, it is that compass. And as everybody knows, true north doesn't waver. That's the whole purpose. It's magnetic north. And that's the whole reason for saying that. I will just share with you, there's this program called Ted Lasso. It's on Apple TV. And no, I'm not, marketing Apple TV or Ted Lasso, but I would tell you there is a scene in that program where the UK football team has just made a terrible error, and they just lost the game. And the coach basically says to one of the players, what is the most important animal in the world? And of course, this person is like, what the heck are you talking about? And he goes, goldfish. And of course, the player's like, what are you really talking about? He said, goldfish don't have memories. Be a goldfish and move forward. And I am telling you, that's one of my greatest takeaways. And when you watch this program, I mean, it's just a great program. But that to me, so every time ever since I've watched that, it's been like, okay, Kath, be a goldfish, move on.
No, I like that. Be a goldfish.
They don't have a memory.
They don't have a memory. That would alleviate a lot of stress. Well, thank you very much, both of you, for joining me on the show. It's been great. I really appreciate you joining us today.
Well, thanks.
Thank you for joining the Woman in Safety podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. Please connect with us to join our global WIS community, to subscribe and listen to our show, or find more great safety resources. Visit safepedia.com. Until next time, stay safe.